If you've seen the great series Connections with James Burke, you know that things don't emerge as a whole piece. The person that's generally attributed with inventing things is actually the guy that came up with the last little piece. And there's a lot of other little pieces that were around for years that got pulled together. And then that guy gets credit, and in fact there's 100 guys that are behind something. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what came before XML, what led up to XML, which is a language largely used for communicating database information between systems of different platforms. The advantage of XML is that it's text-based, so a Mac can read it, a PC can read it, a big UNIVAC computer can read it, an IBM computer can read it, anybody can read it. You can send database data between all kinds of different platforms. And I think you can actually use XML as the database. That's an idea I've been working on lately. But to talk about what led up to XML, between about 1945 and 1951, the first computers were invented. Things like the Mark I and Mark II at Harvard, and the ENIAC and EDVAC, invented by Eckhart Mauchly, and the British ACE computer for code breaking. And in 1945, weirdly, Vannevar Bush first proposed the basics of hypertext, which is really the underlying concept for HTML and, in a way, XML. Both XML and HTML have the same derivative, which is SGML. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik 1, which was the first satellite, beating the United States into space. And I don't know how many people watching this were around then. I think the average age on YouTube is something like 18 to 24. But everyone freaked out. Everyone thought that the Soviets were going to be dropping bombs on us from outer space. And to a large extent, because of this, organization called DARPA was formed, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And DARPA appointed a guy named Joseph Licklider to head the new Information Processing Techniques Office, IPTO. And between 1961 and 1969, Lawrence Roberts was working for Joseph Licklider and developed the ARPANET, Network Packet Switching Architecture. And a special computer called the IMP, the Interface Message Processor, was developed to realize the design. So that in 1969, the Internet was actually first created by ARPANET, working for the DoD. And in October of 1969, ARPANET went live with communication between UCLA and SRI. UCLA being University of California at Los Angeles, and SRI being the Stanford Research Institute. In 1972, I was actually working on a project that used ARPANET in San Diego. It used terminals that were black with orange letters, sort of Halloween-y looking. It was called a plasma panel screen that was invented by Donald Bitzer. And the computer was based in the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, which weirdly was the city I was born in. And I'm currently living in California, where the internet really started. And in 1974, SGML was invented by Charles F. Goldfarb. That's SGML, as I mentioned, was really the protocol on which XML and HTML are based, but it was a huge document, something like 600 pages, and only a small part of it actually went into those languages. In 1974 also, TCP was invented by Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn, which I always thought it was interesting. TCP was invented by guys named Cerf and Kahn, since I'd say surfing and conning are the two main activities on the internet. And then in 1983, the network control program, which I never heard of, was replaced with TCP/IP protocol on ARPANET, and it's still the standard used today. So TCP/IP really came into use in 1983. In 1990, the National Science Foundation connected NSF-Net, which is their network, to CS-Net, which was a huge network in America, and EU-Net, which is a huge network in Europe. And that was starting to form the backbone of what we now think of as the worldwide internet. I believe there were 5 different networks that were actually involved in that backbone. Those 3, ARPANET, and a 5th one. I have no idea what it is. And in 1990, Tim Berners-Lee and others invented the World Wide Web, which isn't the internet. The internet greatly preceded the World Wide Web. And they invented HTML, which is a hypertext markup language, and the concept of URLs, Universal Resource Locators. And this was at CERN in Switzerland, Geneva, Switzerland, although Tim Berners-Lee is actually British. Then Tim Berners-Lee went on to form the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, I think it's also known. And it was the W3C that created the second variation on SGML called XML, which is like HTML, but HTML has about 100 predefined tags, and XML has no predefined tags. The basic philosophy of XML is you totally invent your own tags in order to represent your own data in whatever way you want. You know, it's totally free form in a way. In June of 1993, the first version of HTML was formally published. And in October of 1994, Tim Berners-Lee formed the Worldwide Consortium, or W3C. And in 1996, the initial XML draft was presented in Boston. That's, as I said, a variation on SGML, which was invented by Charles Goldfarb. And in 1998, the official W3C specifications of XML, XML 1.0, was presented. So that's basically the history of how XML evolved.